Hola, Dr. Q. Very pleased to meet you, sir. Thank you for being with us and joining our scholarly academic community.
Thank you, Victor. You're very kind. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be with all of you guys here. It is a great honor for me and a wonderful opportunity to see and meet new friends, and hopefully in the future also meet all of you guys in person.
Así es. Dr. Q, soy Aurora, and I have the great honor of introducing you a little while later. So I'm making sure que pronuncio everything absolutely correct. And
do not
it is
worry
such an
about
honor.
it. Aurora is a beautiful name. All you got to say is say your name, and that's it. You know what I mean? That's all we need to hear.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. We'll have a good time, if anything. So,
Así es.
Alfredo Quiñones, Hinojosa.
mi Teófilo, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, muy bien. Hace como 10 años que te conocí en San Antonio.
Sí, sí, me estaba acordando. ¿En qué conferencia estuvimos? Estuvimos en una conferencia, sí, hace como 10 años.
Sí, la misma de aquí. Te tengo grabado en videotape.
Oh my gosh, time goes fast. And you
made a statement that all brains are the same color.
That's right. Which is true. Which is true. Maybe I'll remember. Maybe I'll remember today, and I'll say the same thing. How is that? Well, you remind me at the end, you know. But it is true. Maybe I'll remember. We'll see. Maybe at one point. This is great. Well, thank you, Teófilo. That's wonderful to be here with all of you guys.
Aurora, how are you?
I am fantastic, Jaime. It's so good to see you.
Likewise, I talked to your husband about 2-3 weeks ago.
Ah, ya ves, secretos, ya ni me dice.
We got to recruit them back to Texas, que no, Jaime?
Hey.
I know. Well, I'm just glad you all are thawed out, because that was a scary situation. Ahí les estábamos mandando warm thoughts, because, híjole.
Pues no estamos impuestos a la nieve. Yo de repente me voy a salir de la junta porque I'm interviewing a department chair and I have to have a Zoom lunch with him at 12 Central Time.
Well, make sure you pick a strong one.
I hope so.
You always do. You pick great leaders, Jaime.
Y Alfredo, ¿dónde te encuentras ahora? ¿En Mayo Clinic o en Miami?
No, Mayo Clinic en Florida, pero norte de Florida, en Jacksonville, que es la última ciudad del norte de Florida. Estamos al mero norte. Sí, me mudé ya hace 4 años y medio. Salí de Maryland, de Baltimore, de Johns Hopkins, y me vine a la Clínica Mayo. Así es que ya han pasado 4 años y medio desde que salí.
Yo
muy
tengo
contento.
hasta el nombre de tu secretaria y tu email de Johns Hopkins, todo lo tengo guardadito.
Todavía sigo mucho en contacto con Johns Hopkins porque tengo muchos colaboradores, todo mi laboratorio. Es que cuando me mudé, se mudaron como otros 25, 26 personas, científicos, doctores conmigo. Entonces se mudó todo el equipo de Brain Tumor Research y luego me vine de jefe del departamento para acá y hemos seguido creciendo. Así es que tenemos conexiones muy fuertes con Johns Hopkins todavía.
Qué bueno, qué bueno.
Felicidades, Alfredo, with all your contributions, your successes. Gracias, es un ejemplo, un ejemplar.
Muy amable.
Sí, muy ejemplar.
Amable,
Have you become
Muy
a
amable.
star since? Have you become a star since Netflix?
If I'm still the same. This morning I was having a few interviews and meetings, and then my dogs, Rocky and Apollo, start barking. And I told it was a woman from Argentina. I said, this morning I had to take the trash out. Nothing has changed. My dogs still don't respect me. They jump all over me when I'm trying to do meetings. So absolutely nothing has changed. Still the same person.
Wonderful interview.
Thank you all for being here. It's 12:01. We will start right now. Thank you.
All right. On behalf of the American Association of Hispanics in Higher Education, I would like to welcome you to today's session. My name is Lauren Brown, and I'll be assisting today. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some general housekeeping items. If you could take a moment to ensure that you have the best connection possible, and go ahead and turn off any Wi-Fi connections to devices you aren't using for the session today. That will increase your broadband width. The session is live and will be recorded. If we could have all participants go ahead and mute right now. And then if you have any comments or questions, you can direct them in the chat. Okay, and now I will turn it over to today's presiding officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Buenos días, buenas tardes a todos. I am delighted you are able to join us for day 3 of more great program offerings. And actually day 4, if we include the amazing sessions last Friday at the pre-conference institutes. I would like to open today with what has become a standard for public convenings, a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are typically focused on the particular setting of the convening. In a virtual environment, this presents a bit of a challenge because in this case, the participants span the coast and the north-south borders of the US. Thus, as the individual presiding over today's plenary, I am Joanne Canales, immediate past chair of the board of directors. I have chosen to acknowledge that I come to you from the traditional land of the Chichimecas and the Otomi, the first people of San Miguel de Allende in Guanajuato, Mexico. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example as we travel our own personal and professional journeys in pursuit of our individual and collective goals. Every year during our post-conference debrief, the board of directors look at each other and wonder, how in the world will we ever be able to top this year? Well, clearly this year's post-conference debrief will be no different. Thus far, we have had stellar presenters at the plenary sessions and the various concurrent sessions. Their work and that of the emerging scholars sharing their award-winning dissertation studies are a wonderful assurance that our future is in great hands. I sincerely hope that your schedules will permit you to join us for the majority of today and tomorrow, given what the remainder of the conference agenda has in store for us. Starting with this morning's plenary. I will be introducing 2 of our star young board members who have the distinct honor of introducing the featured speaker of the 5th annual Cigarroa Family Medical Lecture. Immediately following the lecture and Q&A session, we will move to recognizing the 2021 Dissertation Award winners. If you have not had an opportunity to catch their presentations, I invite you to look up their work. I am confident you'll be reading much more about them in the near future. Now, on to the important work of today's plenary. With us today to introduce the historical context of the lecture and the featured speaker are Drs. Aurora Kamimura and Patricia Perez. Dr. Aurora Kamimura is a lecturer in education and fellow in the Office of the Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs and Diversity at Washington University in St. Louis. She earned her undergraduate degree at UC Irvine, a master's at Harvard University, and her doctorate at the University of Michigan. Her research agenda focuses on broadening access and equity in the P20 professoriate pathway. I invite you to explore her work related to promising practices for enhancing access and equity in the STEM professoriate and undocumented student access to higher education. As an educational professional, Aurora has more than 15 years of experience in statewide college access initiatives and multicultural affairs. Dr. Patricia A. Perez is a professor in the Department of Chicanx, Chicana, Chicano Studies, and coordinator of the Collective for Justice, Equity, and Transformation at CSU Fullerton. Her educational trajectory includes undergraduate and graduate degrees from UCLA, as well as a master's degree in administration, planning, and social policy from Harvard University. Dr. Perez's research interests focus on U.S. higher education inequities, and I invite you to explore her publications on Latina faculty, educational success of migrant farm workers, and higher education access and choice for Latinx students. She is the recipient of several awards, including recognition for exceptional teaching, service, scholarship, and outstanding mentorship, and holds the distinction of being the inaugural recipient of the 2008 AAHHE ETS Outstanding Dissertation Awards. Both of these board members have a long history with AAHHE, having participated in the fellows programs, and in the case of Patricia, having served on and chaired the Outstanding Dissertation Competition Committee. More recently, since joining the board of directors in 2019, they have jointly done some heavy lifting, helping to reimagine and revamp the graduate student and faculty fellows programs. We are truly indebted to them for their energy, experience, wisdom, and commitment. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Perez, who will provide some historical context for the Cigarroa Family Lecture Series.
Gracias, Doctora Canales, for that kind introduction. Buenos días, buenas tardes, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Patricia Perez, and I'm joining you all from the home and ancestral lands belonging to the Tongan Nation, who are still caretakers of this land. On behalf of the AAHHE Board of Directors, it is my pleasure today to be moderating the 5th Annual Cigarroa Family Medical STEM Lecture, the third in a series of phenomenal plenary sessions along with my colega, Doctora Aurora Kamimura. Before Doctora Kamimura introduces our distinguished plenary speaker for today, I would first like to provide some context as to why this plenary bears the Cigarroa family name. While there are several reasons, I share 3 today. Number 1, Dr. Francisco Gonzalo Cigarroa, a 3rd-generation physician, is a much sought-after pediatric and transplant surgeon. In 1995, he joined the faculty of the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio and went on to serve as the Director of Pediatric Surgery, President of the institution from 2000 to 2009, and founder of a multidisciplinary pediatric transplant program focused on kidney, liver, and intestinal transplants. Number 2, from 2009 to 2018, Dr. Cigarroa served as the first Latino to be named Chancellor of the University of Texas System, overseeing 9 universities and 6 health institutions. And I might add, has been the only Latino to head any university system in Texas. Dr. Cigarroa's leadership was critical in the establishment of the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, 2 medical schools, as well as the advancement of engineering across the University of Texas system. Number 3, Dr. Cigarroa is a member of several prestigious societies in the US and Mexico, has been appointed to various national committees by both former Presidents Bush and Obama, and serves on a number of governing board of universities and national research associations. Despite all of his commitments and obligations, he continues to practice pediatric surgery and enjoy his passion as a classical guitarist. 3 themes emerged from Dr. Cigarroa's inaugural address that continue to resonate with us today. The need to be prepared and well-educated to take advantage of opportunities that come our way, the importance of perseverance and family values, and the non-negotiable role of intentionality and commitment to the public good. And I might add here that the Cigarroa family name remains a constant when it comes to intentionality and commitment to the public good. His brother, Dr. Ricardo Cigarroa, a well-known and respected cardiologist with a thriving cardiovascular clinic in Laredo, Texas, converted his clinic to a COVID-19 clinic, went on the road making house calls in Laredo and Nuevo Laredo to COVID-19 patients, treats patients whether or not they have the ability to pay, and is now known as the Dr. Fauci of South Texas. the indelible imprint of the Cigarroa family in supporting the next generation of doctors, inspiring new STEM leaders, and their relentless commitment to the public good could not be more critical or relevant today. It is for these reasons, among others, that the Cigarroa Lecture bears their family name. I will now hand it over to my colega, Doctora Aurora Kamimura, who will introduce our plenary speaker.
Gracias a mi hermana, mi colega, oftentimes my partner in crime, Doctora Patricia Perez. I would like to formally acknowledge the land of the indigenous peoples who have lived on this land since the time immemorial, and specifically the Osage, Ottawa, Missouri, and Illini Confederacy, upon whose historical homeland Washington University in St. Louis is located. Beyond acknowledgement, it is the recognition that we will honor the spirit of our indigenous ancestors and that we will responsibly protect the land for successive generations to benefit from what it has offered us. It is with this extreme humility and pride that I have the distinct honor of introducing today's featured Cigarroa Family Medical STEM Lecture speaker, another individual whose own story, trajectory, and achievements are so awe-inspiring, Dr. Alfredo Quiñones Inohosa, Chair of Neurosurgery and the William J. and Charles H. Mayo Partnership at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. Gosh, where to begin with this individual's amazing journey from harvesting crops in the migrant fields of California to harvesting knowledge in the hallowed halls of Harvard. That will be his story to tell. By way of providing context, however, Dr. Q, as he is affectionately known, began his career at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, where he became a professor of neurosurgery and oncology, neurology, and cellular and molecular medicine, and director of the Brain Tumor Stem Cell Biology Lab. In 2016, he was recruited to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, to assume the William J. and Charles H. Mayo professorship and became chairman of neurosurgery. His expertise in using technology in the treatment of intradural spinal tumors and pituitary and skull-based tumors is legendary. In addition to his clinical practice, Dr. H leads NIH-funded research to find a cure for brain cancer. Wow. He holds over a dozen patents, has started several companies to translate his work to benefit patients, has authored more than 50 book chapters, more than 160 refereed journal articles, served as editor of several key textbooks on neurosurgery, and even authored an international prize-winning autobiography titled Becoming Dr. Q, My Journey from Migrant Farm Worker to Brain Surgeon. He is also the recipient of numerous awards spanning several decades, including the prestigious Odc Award in 2012. If you have a Netflix subscription, you will definitely want to watch the 2020 docuseries titled The Surgeon's Cut, where 4 surgeons described as philosophers, storytellers, and pioneers reflect on their lives and professions. And as you might have guessed, one of those 4 is our very own Dr. Q, whose episode is titled The Sacred Brain. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Q with a round of virtual applause. Dr. Q, you have our undivided attention. Please join us in providing us with, in welcoming Dr. Alfredo Quiñones Hinojosa, the 2021 Cigarroa Family Medical STEM Lecture Plenary Speaker.
Well, thank you, Doctora Kamimura. Thank you, Doctora Perez, and thanks everybody for such a beautiful introduction. I always feel bad after these introductions because I feel that that's the peak of this hour. And after this, it's all going to go down. You know, I mean, the expectations are set so high, and it's just like, it's just so inspired me for me to hear you talk, and just the way that you introduce and you talk about the land in which you are. It just, I learned today. So you gave me an idea as to how I want to do introductions in the future from wherever I am in the world, and then pay honor to those people who have done so much work. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and I hope that through some of the stuff that I'll tell you today, you know, and I'll talk for about 45 minutes, and that way we can have a few minutes for discussion towards the end. They asked me from 12:15 to 1:15, so I'll go for about 45 minutes, and I'll show you some slides right now. But I hope I have an opportunity to share with you the enthusiasm, the excitement, the things that we're doing here at the Mayo Clinic. And I have to give my team credit. I stand also on the shoulders of giants, and I will be presenting some of the work for which many people credit me, but the reality is that there are many, many, many unsung heroes behind me, you know, and I stand on their shoulders constantly to be able to try to do what we do, and hopefully one day change the world. So I'm going to share some of my slides. So why don't I start with this right here? Let me come to this presentation right here. We tested it earlier. You let me know if you can actually see this presentation. Everybody can see that? All right. So what a great honor for me to be here with all of you at this American Association of Hispanics in Higher Education and this Cigarroa lecture, which I had an opportunity to just learn, you know, a little bit, and just to hear you talk about the three generations, what the current Cigarroa doctors are doing and how they are inspiring. It really inspires me also to try to keep making myself a better surgeon, a better physician, and a better human being. You know, as I saw the distinguished lectures that you have had since 2017, and to understand as to where the name came from, where it plays a role into the past, the present, and of course the future. I hope that in the future generations, one day, people can keep looking at these, you know, lectures as the foundation on which many, many people like you continue to change the world. You know, and I am humble that that last part that this lecture feature, I think everything above that, those two other paragraphs are true. The last one for me, I don't think of myself as being any icon, any leader. I try to follow those around me. I get inspired by my students constantly, by my doctors around me, the people in my department. You know, they say that I am the chair and that I'm a leader at Mayo, but the reality is I lead by following them. I listen to what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I am a facilitator rather than a leader, you know, as a surgeon in the operating room, as a scientist in my laboratory, and of course, as a philanthropist now through a foundation that we have, in which we go around the world and do some of the most amazing complex surgeries and people that are very, very, very poor. Imagine some of the surgeries that I do, they can vary between anywhere with $200,000 to $2 million. And I, through our foundation, have been so blessed to be able to partner with some of the most prominent brain surgeons in the United States that you wouldn't get us anywhere else in the world to operate unless we go together. And we do it with pleasure because we try to do things on behalf of science and our disciplines to help people who are in much greater need. So I'll tell you a little bit about that as well as we go through this. This is, you're right. I mean, I'm known for that book, Becoming Dr. Q, in some extent. Brad Pitt, Plan B, they're making a movie out of that book. Netflix just did their documentary. In 2009, there was another documentary out of Hopkins called Hopkins. Actually got a Peabody Award. Today, I found out that Netflix was recommended for as a finalist for an award in England through the BBC in London. So, and I am, of course, author of now 8 books, 6 more books that are coming out through Elsevier and neurosurgery in different disciplines. And I would say that You know, I love what I do as a writer, but if you want to fall asleep, of course, read one of my neurosurgical books because they are, you know, they are technical in nature. I even myself, when I'm writing them, I get so tired. But at the end of the day, I'm passionate about what I do in the operating room, and I try to put it down in writing. And it is true that I've been so blessed that I was able to crack the code and how to get funding through the NIH as early as 2003 when I was a resident. I got my first grant as a PI. And then since then, we have gotten millions and millions of our own dollars. The public, you know, my colleagues believe that the work that we do gets a seal of approval from scientists. And anybody who gets NIH funding knows that it's not easy. This cycle, the 2020, I put no less than 14 NIH R01s and a sport grant. These are super, and I got zero of them. All of them got resubmitted. I'm beginning to hear about those resubmissions. But the reality is that's the game of science. It's not a game, it's the way in which we get to learn. My colleagues, they give me criticism. I take it positively. We try to make our science better. And that's how we ended up doing what we do. But this is what I do in the OR. And I did that I hoping that I'm going to publish through UC Press, you know, in 2022. And I talk about this: the dull buzzing drowned out the rhythm in the operating room, the beeps of the anesthesia monitor, the crunch of the hemostat, the faint hissing of the suction. These are the familiar sounds of the operating room, the OR, familiar enough to even bring a sense of calmness during brain surgery. And it is true, it's chaotic in the operating room. Things get very, very, you know, dangerous. I always, every time I walk into the operating room, I feel like I am walking a fine line between life and death. And it is that fast that things can happen. And the only reason I can do it is because, once again, I have the best anesthesiologists, the best neurologists, the best nurses, the best technicians, the best people right there. I am never alone. Although some of those moments I get quite crazy, you know, they can feel really lonely. And especially when you feel like someone's life is beginning to escape your hands, whether it's in the operating room or following a surgery and the neurocritical care. And if I tell you that all my patients that I do surgery are successful, I'll be lying through my teeth, because the reality is that's how I began back in when I was a medical student at Harvard between 94 and 99. I began to really understand the power of science. And I realized that for me to be able to welcome that fear of doing surgery, and for me to be able to give my patients hope, I needed to do something more than just surgery. And that's how I began to really get engaged in science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's the topic of the lecture that we are discussing today. This is the place. Most people wonder. And I was actually there through the Netflix. That border, that fence, at the time must have been, I don't know, maybe about 5 meters or so with barbed wire towards you. And at the moment that you jump up towards the Mexican side, you see, I took a picture. This was a picture that I did right before I went to UC Berkeley in 1991. And I was looking at this. This is exactly the place where I have the fence. I'm looking at it from the American side. And those who never live in the border, in this case, the director, Lucy Blackstad, was there on the other side, from the Mexican side. Here you're looking from the American side. And she said, this is so surreal, you know, that you can actually see the American side. And I remember as a little boy, just thinking about this land of opportunity, the United States, you know, and it is. I was in the pursuit of a better life. I would say that it is a land of opportunity, but doesn't come out without a price. I think that I try to keep a very, very positive energy in my life, but I would say that this next book, and that's the title, The Deepest Cut, is really cutting deep into the essence that many of us have had to sacrifice through our life to be able to achieve the American dream. And I see a lot of heads nodding up and down. It is a great amount of sacrifice. And I will try it in my next book to do precisely that, to really get a very powerful introspection into my own life and the things that I had to sacrifice with my parents, my siblings, my friends. Just this morning, when I was interviewing with a reporter from Argentina, and they asked me, how did I do it? What did I do? And I said, when I was 19, I left it all behind. I hopped the fence right there. And I remember I never looked back. It was symbolic as I was running forward to try to avoid the Immigration Naturalization Service. And that scary night of January 2nd, 1987, when I just turned 19 years old. But that was it. That was the American dream that I had, of course, and a dream that you know, becomes a reality. This was my first home. This was 1987. This was the San Joaquin Valley in Fresno, California, the largest farming community in the world. You know, that's where I picked tomatoes. And I talk about happiness. I talk about happiness because happiness is not the awards that you get, is not the degrees that you get. It's sometimes is the ability to do something that fulfills you. And when I work in the fields as a tomato picker, I was fulfilled. I love what I did. My dream was to become the best tomato picker in the world. And I remember I used to drive these big tractors. John Deere was the brand, and it was so monumental, huge. I began picking weeds, and within a year, I was just driving the most amazing machinery. And I remember I used to look back and see with pride what I was doing, because I felt that I was putting food on the table of a lot of people, and I felt part of something much larger, and I was happy. People ask me, am I happier today as a brain surgeon, as a leader, as an author, whatever? I said, no, I'm equally happy, because happiness doesn't come from awards and degrees. It comes from inside of each of us. And I remember that little house, of course, you know, every now and then I would go to sleep at night at age 19 and cry myself to sleep, because I really wasn't quite sure what my future was going to be like, as I was at this time undocumented, not illegal. The other day I had an interview with Don Francisco on CNN, and he corrected me because you were not illegal, you were undocumented, which is very different. And that's exactly true. I was undocumented, but eventually, you know, the world, the country, the United States opened its arms and recognized. As a matter of fact, they opened the arms for many of us who come in and spend, you know, many, many days and nights working the land. This land of opportunity can be hard sometimes, no question about it. But if you look at the history of the United States, it has been made on the backs of a lot of immigrants. And many of us have come from very, very humble beginnings, and we continue to make extraordinary contributions to this country. There was me. I show you some funny pictures. That was actually my Berkeley period with the long hair. That was 91 to 94, right before I went to Harvard Medical School in 94. That's the picture with my wife, Anna. You know, we eventually married in 1996. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary last week. And I can't believe that she has tolerated me that long. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I see Joanne smiling because it's true. I may seem very nice to you, but you can imagine it's not easy to live with someone like me. There's my moods go up and down like life. I'm a roller coaster. I'm full of passion, of energy, but I'm also probably bipolar in some ways, and up and down. And there's a tremendous amount of energy at nights, days that I don't sleep, that I do science, that I write, and that's always been my modus operandi since I was a little boy. And that she has been so patient and so understanding and so strong. And in my house, everybody knows that she's the brains in the house. I like to tell you that I am the muscle, but I'm not even that, all right? And she's really, my kids, they make fun of me. My own children, they say, Daddy, you know so much of so little. I tell you an anecdote. One time when my oldest daughter was maybe about 7 years old, and I was a second year, I was about to become an associate professor. I climbed the ranking at Johns Hopkins to be a full professor within 5 years. And I had just been promoted to associate professor, and I thought I was a big shot. And my wife, Anna, says to me, you know, I think Gabby has an ear infection. Relax, let me sort this out. I go and bring my bag, which I hadn't used for years from medical school, pull out my stethoscope, pull out, you know, my ear device with the light, I put batteries, and I go, she's perfect. She's ready to go to school, no problem. So my wife sends my daughter to school. Like 2 hours later, I am in the hospital, and she calls me, goes, the nurse called me. She has raging ear infections in both of her ears, and they're sending her back. So since then, my kids, they know better. Anything, mom knows everything. I know very little. I do know about the brain, a lot, but very little, but that's the truth. But you can imagine, I mean, this is, we've been together. She met me when I was working in the railroad, no longer working in the fields, but I was working in the railroad as a janitor before I even became a welder and do all kinds of crazy stuff. By the way, I'm probably the only board certified neurosurgeon who was also at a point in my life board certified in heavy duty welding in the state of California. But that's the same techniques. People wonder how to use your hands. Well, back then I used to weld, you know, really heavy metal in the railroad, like super 17, 18, anybody who knows about welding. Nowadays, I go in and I use techniques where sometimes when I'm disconnecting a tumor, I have to weld the small little vessels. And I tell my residents, who by the way, a lot of my students are trained in the highest prep schools, Yale, Harvard, you name it. I tell them, you know, I used to be a welder and I used to do the same techniques back then, which is true. You learn, you know, techniques in life. This is me on April 14, 1989, in June 1999, graduating from Harvard Medical School. That's my daughter, Gabby, who is now 22, just turned 20. She's just locking eyes into Dr. Hatcher, who was the Surgeon General at the time. He gave the main commencement speech as a faculty, and I was the student who was selected by my peers to give the commencement speech from the Harvard Medical School. Just a few weeks ago, I was looking at that video, you know, and recollections of my life as I try to understand more and more, you know, the sacrifices that my family mainly had to make. And it reminded me, I remember telling the story on April 14, 1989, just 10 years prior, when I was fighting for my life at the bottom of a liquefied petroleum tank and the railroad. And that's, of course, part of the attraction of Brad Pitt and Plan B and making part of my, and I'm sure this is going to be a feature where I am gasping for air, fighting for my life. And my father, who was only 42 years old, was trying to go in to save my life, his 19-year-old son, and he almost died himself. And it was just a tremendous, you know, part of my life. And it was something that, as I look back, had a very penetrated my soul and my DNA in ways which has taken me 30 years really, really to understand. But this is it. 1989, I almost died. 10 years later, here I am, graduating from Harvard Medical School, about to go in and to be the first Mexican American to be trained at the University of California, San Francisco, which at the time, and still the present, probably the premier program to train in brain surgery. The first, think about this, California, okay? An amazing place, so much diversity, and yet the first Mexican American, that was because Mitch Berger, who was the chair, saw something in me. I was competing with 11 other Harvard graduates alone who were by the books extraordinarily accomplished, much more than I could have been. And I remember, you know, how he eventually admitted me to that service. And that was the beginning of my next phase in my life after graduating from medical school. And that was a transformation. This is a painting from my daughter, Gabriela, who's also an artist, you know, and she and I are working in a project right now. I like to think, and they tease me as well, because they are all, my kids are very talented, thanks to mom, when it comes to art. And I tease them, I say, you know, when I'm in the operating room and I'm taking tumors, I feel like an artist. I'm a sculptor. I am a sculptor in the brain. I am moving, I'm taking pieces. And they laugh and they say, Daddy, you're not an artist. But I do feel in my heart, like my kids, I am an artist, and I'm an artist. I'm a person who continues to give my patients hope through this transformation in my own life. This is my lab. I'll spend a few minutes. I mean, you can read, you know, I've been blessed. As of this morning, we have 470 papers in PubMed with an H index of 75, you know, 4 NIH grants and several books, whatever. The reality is the essence of everything that we do comes down to our patients, and the fact that we study the tissue that I collect in the operating room. In 2003, very early on in my career when I was a resident, I was able to crack the code and convince my colleagues, scientists, that the work that we do matters and we should support it. And that's what we can do. Many labs spend their life trying to get a paper to be the cover of journals. We have gotten dozens and dozens. That wall in my lab, if you ever come in to my lab, you'll see walls and walls now full of either books or covers of journals. And that's just not my work, not only my work, but it's the work of a lot of people. So I tell the students in my lab, my colleagues, you know, find your passion, figure the problem, form new paths, bring people together. And that's exactly what probably has been my greatest gift that I have, is the ability to connect people, the ability to empower them to change the world. I cannot change the world. They can change the world, especially if they unite. And if I can be the glue that brings them together from all over the world, all over kind of religions, and passions, then the world keeps being a better place. My passion has been in cancer. Why? Because cancer keeps growing. You may not know, but in 21 states already in the United States, it's the #1 killer. By the year 2025, it's estimated that it'll be the #1 killer in the United States, in our communities, especially in underprivileged communities, underrepresented minorities. Is going to be the #1 killer, extraordinarily expensive. Also, the access to care for people like me is so limited by our populations, and we must change that. Of course, cardiovascular and cerebrovascular, this continues to be a problem, but cancer will continue. By the year 2030, it'll be the #1 cause of death in the world, and especially in developing countries. Just think about this, and the expense, the technology needed to care for patients is extraordinarily high. So in my lab, we began to understand this. We began to study migration, invasion. I am in the middle. Those 12 patents that you mentioned, they have now converted to about 25 patents. We're trying to understand, how can I translate what I do at the Mayo Clinic to the rest of the world, either through technology or devices, so that way we can equilibrate the way that we do surgery on patients. And that's why when I go around the world and I do surgeries, I'm not just going there to tell them how to do surgery. I'm going there to learn from my colleagues. There are gifted surgeons around the world. They're gifted scientists, and they teach me so much. But my passion has been in trying to understand this. Why? Because of this reason, the amount of people that are constantly dying in the world. Finding my voice has been extraordinarily important in my life, and it's been a journey that I have to look for. And now I'm going to play some. I'm going to bring you to what I do in the operating room, and I have a couple of minute video clip, and we tested the sound. But if the sound doesn't work, please let me know. Let's see if I can take you into the operating room and see a little bit of what I do.
My name is Alfredo Quiñones Hinojosa. I am the chair of neurologic surgery. My role here at the Mayo Clinic is to take care of patients that have the most complex type of brain and spine disorders. When Cherry came to clinic, first of all, the first thing that I saw a young woman, age 40, and I saw this young woman with her husband, with 2 teenage daughters, and her mother, with a history of von Hippel-Lindau. Von Hippel-Lindau is a genetic condition, and some patients obviously develop these conditions where they run in their families. They tend to develop several tumors in different parts of the body. When it comes relevant to neurosurgery is when they develop tumors in the brain. But what Cherry had was a tumor the size of my fist. I saw a woman in a wheelchair because she couldn't walk anymore. I saw a woman that was beginning to have more difficulty controlling her daily functions. And I knew that she was getting into that situation where things were going to get more and more dangerous. She had undergone more than 9 surgeries prior to coming to us. And she had already a very aggressive round of radiation as well. So her brain couldn't tolerate many, many more things. But we knew, based on our experience and our multidisciplinary team, that her best choice of fighting for her life was to take her to the operating room, try to get this tumor out. And this is when I get Dr. Robbie Talk involved in this.
People with von Hippel-Lindau disease have typically tumor lesions that grow in a very uncontrollable way, and there is sometimes multiple of them, and they are very, very difficult to take out. Okay, so 2 things.
One of the things that you have to consider about these tumors are the extraordinary challenges when you take a patient like this into the operating room. The first thing that you have to consider is that they're so vascular that at the moment that you go in, these tumors can basically explode in front of you, and then suddenly the field is saturated with blood and you don't know exactly what wires you're disconnecting, so you can leave the patient, completely incapacitated, unable to swallow, unable to breathe. Heart can stop suddenly in the operating room. So all those things are the risk associated with surgery.
We saw her problem to be challenging, and we got ready.
So we designed, Dr. Robbie Talk was going to go in with the small little catheters and inject the small nanoparticles that would allow the tumor to die from the inside out, deploying technology that only a few people in the world can do. But that actually came from the fact that we are familiar with that technology, that we get to use it in the laboratory every day. You have to be someone who is constantly working in research and in education and trying to use all that knowledge back into the patient.
Now, when it comes to surgery, what we did differently is we lined up a microscope and we worked with 4 hands together.
And we were able to come in and surround this tumor, and we were able to get the tumor out completely. The images show an amazing resection. The images show a dream, an amazingly clean cavity, despite of the fact that this tumor, like I said, was the size of my fist. She's beginning to walk. She's beginning to get out of her wheelchair. She is beginning to be cleared by physical therapy and occupational therapy at the rehab facility. She was shaking my hand. She had much better control of her legs. The fact that she's up and about tells me that she is just amazing.
After surgery is done, there is a lot of research. We analyze the genes, we take blood samples. This is essential because we're looking at how to fight this disease.
To me, what is inspirational is the fact that the knowledge that we have acquired through taking care of her are the tools that we are using and will continue to further develop so that way we can take care of her daughters. One of them has a lesion, we're monitoring, no issues, and the other one is being tested. And we're using all those resources and all that knowledge at the Mayo Clinic to take care of the next generation. And I think that that's another reason why this story needs to be told.
Every time I listen to that story, I'm speechless. Since then, I have not only Sherry put her life in my hands, but then she put her daughter's life in my hand. And imagine what an amazing gift. And to hear about the technology, the nanoparticles that we use, some of the stuff that we have protected and through patents and intellectual property, I love that. But the reality is that these things are only available to a few people. How can we make them available to many more around the world? And that has been a challenge for me. How can we make it available to many people within the United States? We know that despite of this being an amazing country, we still have a bifurcation of classes. And of course, in some other parts of the world, that bifurcation of classes is still even more accentuated and accelerated, but we still have a bifurcation of classes. So I struggle with this, and it is part of what I am trying to reconcile and figure out the ways in which I can do it better in my own life. And that's the reason why we continue to work diligently on my foundation. Despite of the pandemic, we continue to work, and you've seen it. And I see this other brief case to show you. That other case was filmed a couple of years prior, but during the pandemic, we continue to do what we do. And many of you, the unsung heroes, are really the people who are, in the back, which you never see them either on television or you never hear from them. My nurses, my technicians, the people cleaning the rooms, the people moving the patients from the operating room to the floor, to the CT scan, to the MRI, the workers on the cafeteria, the people cleaning, the spaces in which we work. These are truly the people who deserve all the recognition. And I think that I am inspired by all of them, because their work means that we get to care for patients like this. This is a patient, you saw the young age, presented unable to move. She has such a huge skull tumor, a skull-based tumor that happened right in the middle of the pandemic. And if we didn't operate, she was going to lose her life. And you can actually see the tumor right in the middle of the neck. To approach these tumors, they are extraordinarily complex. And yet, this is exactly in March, we shut down our hospital in the middle of March. And this is exactly when she came in. So we had to do all this, and this was going to require several phases of surgery, several trips to the operating room with the highest amount of technology, and at least 3 other hospitals in the region had declined to operate on her, not only because of the fact that they were shut down because of the pandemic, but also because of the lack of expertise. So we ended up taking her to the operating room. We ended up doing all this through the nose. This is it. We are entering and venturing. Think about this. This is the same kid who came to this country undocumented, who was picking tomatoes in the fields, you know, who had not a penny, not even a place to sleep many, many nights. And here is this young kid working with an ENT surgeon, with our colleagues. We're taking this tumor away from the brain, little by little, working through the nose, you know, right against the essence of life, the brain stem, the vascular artery, you know, parts of the brain like the medulla, where things, any significant millimeter, sub-millimeter of mistake can be the difference between life and death. And we did it, and we got her through in this case, and she went home in a couple of days. She recovered. We brought her back for a second phase of the surgery, utilizing a $10 million intraoperative MRI, which, by the way, I am trying to do the same type of surgery with a device that we invented that could potentially cost us to make about $25,000 instead of $10 million. That's also part of the technology that we've been launching, and myself now starting 2 different companies to see if we can make this technology available for the rest of the world. But we brought her into this $10 million intraoperative MRI to do the second phase of the surgery. And you can see us going into the operating room, same pathology as a tumor called a chordoma. And then we had a third phase, the spine surgery, where you had to fuse the spine. Otherwise, when you treat it with radiation, you can disconnect the head from the spine, and that, of course, can be lethal right at the medulla. But these are the cases, of course, that went on during the pandemic, and she ended up doing extraordinarily well from this resection, you know, and that's it. You know, this is it. How do I relate to my patients? They are finally constantly walking that nice and sometimes blurry line between life and death. It's because I can relate to. I was there already not long ago. It seems like it was yesterday. I still have nightmares about that night, that day in April 14, 1989, where I almost lost my life, you know. But our work, and I talk about this in my next book, The Deepest Cut, doesn't end the moment that we leave the hospital. And there's nothing physical that separates the surgeries, everything, you know, as we come home and our families are waiting, anxiously waiting. It is quite sort of telling to me, you know, that it has been very, very challenging for me to separate and disconnect from the fact that I just left a patient fighting for his or her life. And that, of course, sometimes affects you as a human being. And over the last few years, I reflected more upon that. And I imagine that many of you and many of your professions is no different. You care for what you do. You are so passionate for what you do that when you go home, it's difficult to disconnect. And in my own life, over the last few years, I began to reconcile and to understand that and to talk to people about that, to my own therapist about this, as to what it's like to deal with this every day, you know, to feel the weight on your shoulders constantly, and to know that people like you expect that someone like me to say something intelligent, even on a lecture like this, when I have nothing intelligent to tell you, because the reality is that I don't feel like I have done anything special. I feel like what I do is just what God, the gift that God gave me. Yesterday, I was talking actually to a very famous singer that I used to listen when I was a little kid in Mexico. These are people who got in multiple Grammy Awards and stuff like that. And I remember telling him that, you know, yesterday, and now we're dealing with a health situation, and just saying, I used to listen, you know, to you when I was a little kid, and nothing has changed. I mean, it's just so humbling, you know. And I said, you know, I don't know, you know, you're now getting, you know, asking me for advice and medicine. I said, I do what I do because it's a gift. And he said to me, the fact that I have a voice that, you know, that is done so much, it's also a gift. And we identify that the things that are given sometimes are gifts. Of course, what we do with that gift is the difference. And that's what we have a decision to make. These are some of the lessons. There's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And I got to tell you, many times I have made the mistake of crossing that line. And the biggest challenge is try to step back into the confidence, but not to be arrogant. You know, it is acceptable to be self-assured in a form of appreciation of our abilities, you know, that gives you that confidence. What is unacceptable is to have that exaggerated sense of importance or abilities. That is when we really cross into arrogance. It is, I am nothing else but a servant. Yes, I am gifted by the fact that I have an amazing team, not by my hands, not by my knowledge, but the fact that I have been able to somehow surround myself by people that are constantly much smarter than I am. That's probably the biggest gift that I have, that somehow I convince them that I have something meaningful to contribute to their lives, their careers, and they continue to surround me. And that's how, by the way, we have continued to enlarge our Department of Neurosurgery, and now the entire Mayo system here at the Mayo Clinic in Florida. Actually, as we continue, since I came in, we have doubled our footprint now that I serve on the board as well. And my companies continue to grow, and the books and all the stuff, all the accolades that are meaningless to me if we don't do good use with those things around the world. This is where I cross the line between confidence and arrogance, but I'm going to try to make a little bit fun of myself. I remember when this was announced. So since then, we moved from Disney, by the way, to Annapurna. Plan B still, they got in several Academy Awards. Jeremy Kleiner is right there, right next to Didi Garner, who's in the middle, and right next to Didi Garner is Brad Pitt. They have a company. Jeremy came to me in 2007, you know, when the first time he had a report, and all things considered, you know, Maria Inohosa used to have a show, Latinos USA. After that, there was a whole show. Debbie Elliott was one of the reports, all things considered. They do an interview on me, you know, and Jeremy Kleiner, here's this interview. He was a Harvard graduate in 1999, undergraduate, the same year that I graduated from medical school. So he went to the internet, found my name, found my email, contacted us. I want to talk to you. I want the rights to your life. This is 2007. And I remember he came and met with me, and I was just like, what, my life? I mean, I haven't done anything. I need to accomplish something. Over the next few years, I moved to a full professor. I published several books, published my own story. I wanted to tell my story, becoming Dr. Q my own way, you know. And eventually by 2015, he got in his first Academy Award, which is this picture that was 12 Years a Slave. Since then, they've been nominated multiple times. It's considered to be one of the most respected production companies in Hollywood. And they do stories that matter. Moonlight, of course, you know. After that, 12 Years a Slave, I got an Academy Award, those two for Best Pictures. Selma, you know, If the Streets of Bale Could Talk, and just so many amazing movies that continue to make. Now they're working in my movie. Well, when they announced this, one day I come home, and my son David, who is now 19 at the time, you know, just a little boy, and he says to me, Daddy, is it true that they're going to make a movie about you? And I think to myself, oh my God, he's got a very, very wicked sense of humor, very sarcastic, always taking any opportunity to make fun of his old man. And I said, this is it. This is the opportunity that I've been waiting for my own son to realize how important his father is. Once again, mistake number one, I crossed the line between confidence and arrogance, all right? So there you go. I said, this is it. So yeah, son, you're going to make a movie. So what do you think? I said, wow. Daddy, who's going to play your role? I said, I don't know, son. Mistake number two. Again, confidence. I don't know, son. I said, you know, but they want someone really tall. And, you know, I'm only like 5'7", and that's with cowboy boots, all right? They want someone really, really muscular. And I don't know about you. I'm more into, like, I was a little bit chubby. Now I'm a little bit in the wiry category, not really super muscular. And then mistake number two, that I lie again. And then I said, and they want someone really, really handsome. Well, I never been in the handsome category. I think my grandfather described me more in the charming category rather than the handsome. And I said, well, they are thinking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to play my role. And my son, just like Aurora right now, busted in laughter. And he looks at me and says, Daddy, it's going to be Danny DeVito playing your role. But that's right. You know, your kids have this way of just bringing you down into terra firma. But that's when I crossed the line between confidence and arrogance, and they just bring you down right there. And by the way, I did meet, when I was a student at UC Berkeley, Danny DeVito and Arnold filmed the movie Twins, do you remember? And they filmed it at UC Berkeley in 1993, if I remember correctly, and I met him. I can tell you, he's definitely short, all right? I was a giant right next to him, and my son is making, but that's right. People will have and find a way of bringing you down in your knees. In my life, my science, my work, every single day brings me down to my feet in terra firma. And this is it. You know, by the way, the same cells that we collected from young women that I told you with the chordoma, guess what? We're growing them in avatars in my lab. This is the work done by Rachel. Rachel is an amazing scientist. She's a doctor in philosophy and neurosciences, and she's also a doctor of veterinary school. She leads these efforts, you know, and I'm the PI of the whole laboratory. We're over 35 scientists now, but the reality, I'm just the symbol. The reality, the work, the intellect is coming from them. My role is to somehow keep up with what they're doing and try to understand it, because the reality many times is going over my head, and it's just amazing what they do. And here it is, Rachel growing these cells in the laboratory in animals, so one day we can find a cure for brain cancer. And I said that it brings me down on my knees, because the reality is I failed more times than I have succeeded. And that reminds me of Michael Jordan. The reason why he scored so many points, he said once, is because he missed. He took a lot of shots. And that's how I feel about my life. I tell my students, if you have an idea, chase it, dream it, don't let it go. You know, I feel like I am sort of a dog. I have 2 dogs, Rocky and Apollo, and every time I give them a bone, oh my gosh, they grab it and don't let it go. It is easy to give up. It is much, much more challenging to imagine the light when everybody else, all they see is darkness. And that has been my life. Do you know that in our brain, we have over 100 billion neurons? Think about this, amazing. Now link it back to the synapses in a bit. This extraordinarily organ that we can hold in our hands every single day, and I get to see it, I get to touch it. My patients give me a gift every single day by allowing me to be part of their life. It inspired me. For me, it is an inspiration. Imagine if we use more of our brain. Imagine if we can connect those 164 trillion synapses. Do you know that in this right now, going in each of your brains and your synapses, you have more synapses going on in your brain than there are stars in the galaxy? Imagine if we can just use them in a way that would just allow us to dream, allow us to imagine the unimaginable. And that is the power that we have, you know, in our brains and between our hands. You know, this is, I was saying earlier when I showed, this is actually something we couldn't decipher how cells move and how they migrate, because they're moving all over the place. These are human cancer cells migrating the human brain. For the first time, we were able to image them, and it took us 5 years to crack the code. And it was not until I was able to partner with a postdoc at the NIH who had to spend 5 years working at Pixar, which that's all they do, cartoons. So we had to partner literally with someone who has experience in Pixar to be able to decipher the code, mathematical and physical code, as to how cells migrate. So that way, when I try to put the brakes on cancer cell migration and invasion through some of the mechanisms that we discover in my laboratory, in our laboratory, then I can understand how much of those brakes I'm putting on these cancer cells. Otherwise, we are testing hypotheses without really having endpoints, without really having metrics that are important. And this is what we have and continue to do in my laboratory. Being great at something means that you are going to be bad at it for a while. Before, I don't think I'm great at anything yet. I've been bad at it my entire life. I'm still trying to reach that perfection in my surgery, my science, and the work that I do around the world. And it is true, you know, that what we say today has a tremendous influence. Everything, what you're doing today through these lectures, what you're doing to mentor our future generations matters, you know. And of course, for me, finding my voice has been such a challenge, you know, and I do it through the work in my lab, and most recently, of course, to my foundation. Let me take you for a couple of minutes to a video that will show you a little bit about the work that our team, not just me, but our team. I'm the president of the foundation, but the reality is, same deal. I formed this foundation with another neurosurgeon who mentored me when I was at UCSF, and 2 nurses who trained me. The 4 of us started because this was very, very symbolic and very important. Let's see if I can take you into this area. The disease that we care for in brain surgery is a complex disease. A lot of the cases that we do are incredibly complex, and that's what sets apart this mission from any other mission in the world. We are not here to tell people how to do surgery. We're here to share our knowledge and to learn from them.
Most importantly, I think the organization is such that you bring 3 neurosurgeons that are skilled in all of neurosurgery. You bring a cerebrovascular neurosurgeon, you bring a tumor or neuro-oncology surgeon, and a pediatric neurosurgeon.
That's why I think it's of value is if we can connect with a couple of neurosurgeons in these critical places and give them the confidence to keep doing the tough cases, then I think their payback to their society, their culture will be huge.
The chemistry, I think that this is like a dance, and you have to learn how to trust your partner, and I trust them, they trust me, we trust each other, and that's why when we are in the operating room, the impact that it has not only in their knowledge, but also in their ability to do things for other patients with the things we donate to them is multiplied tenfold in my opinion, and they do miracles.
You know, that was produced by one of my students that started a company. You know, it's they are the unsung heroes. It's not me. You heard the voice of George Jallo, who had zero connections to these parts of the world. You heard the voice of Michael Lawton, who has zero connection to these parts of the world. And I think I'm beginning to understand my role in the world and how I am building bridges between those who have and those who do not have. And I've been the bridge that has brought them to these parts of the world to give their best with their heart in their hands. And that's what they do. So to me, they are truly the unsung heroes. You know, I leave you with some last thoughts. This is actually the fence now. Now I'm looking at it from the American side. This is part of actually another documentary that hasn't been released, and they've been filming me for literally 6 years. And we're looking at it from the Mexican side into the American side. And I'm looking at it through this right here. And they took this picture. And I remember my son and the crew are waiting in the car, you know, to this side behind the camera. And I remember coming back, and I told Richard, who's the director, I said, Richard, you know, I don't think I would be able to jump this fence today. And my son David was there, and he says, Dad, you're getting old. Yeah, I'm getting old. He goes, no, I'm not talking physically. He goes, Dad, I think you are at the top of your, I don't think I've been as fit in my life as I am today. He goes, you're getting old here. Because back then, that fence wouldn't stop you from dreaming. And it is true. This is why I continue to surround myself by the youth, because they have dreams that some of us are beginning to lose in our life. But yeah, you know, a leader.
Dr. Q, you muted yourself.
All right, sorry about that. Did I get it right now? Can you hear me back? Yes, I don't know why I got excited. I got excited. So, you know, so a leader is a servant. You know, a great leader gets the job done. You know, a good leader gets the job done. A great leader inspires, has a vision and humility is when needed. I'm still striving to be that leader to my team. I'm not there yet. That was becoming Dr. Q. And this next book, The Deepest Cut, I'm trying to look deep in my own life and how can I become that leader that inspires the next generation of scientists, technologists, engineers, mathematicians, physicians, leaders, whatever they decide to do, carpenters, because I'm a heart. I tell I'm a carpenter. I work with a hammer and a nail. In my case, it's the scalpel, the instruments. But at the end of the day, I'm nothing else but a servant. You know, so hopefully one day I'll try to become that great leader, you know, and try to build bridges, dreams, you know, and don't let anybody tell you that those barriers are unattainable. So I leave you with that. I left a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing right here so that way I can see all your faces and maybe able to answer a few questions. Thank you. We have, I tried to finish. I'm sorry, I was trying to do about 45 minutes. I went to 50, so I got it super excited.
Dr. Q, You are a gift to the Latinx community, to the world. Your lecture was very powerful. Thank you for sharing about you, your family, and the critical work you were doing with your team around brain cancer at the Mayo Clinic. Thank you so much for your vulnerability. I want to share 5 observations, if I may, that I learned from your wonderful presentation before we open it up to questions. 1, the importance of surrounding yourself with the best folks. 2, it is important to honor and acknowledge all the team members, from techs, doctors, custodians to nurses. They all play critical roles. 3, you are a prolific writer. Please tell us when the deepest cut will be dropping, and maybe give us some hints for the doctoral students in the room, in the Zoom room. 4, happiness comes from within. 5, no matter who you are, family will check you and keep you grounded. And finally, more of a question rather than a comment, but where would we be without immigrants who make the world go round? At this time, we'll open it up for questions. We'll start with the few that are already in the chat box.
Dr. Q, me dejaste con a lump in my throat. That was absolutely inspiring. And I think the questions that some of our familia here have for you echo that as well. So Claudia Garcia Lewis posted this question. As a Mexican immigrant and former farm worker myself, I'd like to thank you for inspiring so many of us to keep working towards our dreams. One of the things that brought me to tears in the docuseries was when you shared your story about being told that Mexicans were not smart, that you could not possibly be Mexican, and that you began to hide your Mexicanidad. Unfortunately, this isn't new and continues to happen to our children. How and when did you find the strength to reclaim your identity as a Mexican? And what did you gain when you began to claim that identity in public once again? Gracias.
Just hearing the question, my eyes began to burn a little bit, because it saddens me what is going on in the United States right now, and to hear so many bad things about immigrants, not just Mexican American, anybody. And I look back at my own life, and I look back at how that comment had a negative impact in my own self-esteem, to the point that when I was in medical school, I admit it now and I deal with it. I was embarrassed to tell people that I was Mexican, because I had heard already how the highest elite that you can possibly imagine, how the young woman felt about Mexicans and the preconceived idea that she had, and it affected me. So now I can only imagine what our children, what our young people hear about immigrants, not just Mexicans, anybody, how immigrants, especially coming from humble backgrounds or humble beginnings, how will this have an impact in our country, in our world? It's going to be extraordinarily powerful in a negative way. And I think for me, now it is very important that people know how proud I am. And I don't know if you notice in the surgeon's cut, they do talk about the fact that I grew up religious. They do talk about the fact that I grew up with the matachines, with the cultural things that were native to the people, the indigenous people of our country, from Culiacan, from Sonora, from Michoacan, from all these parts of the world, including Los Cachanillas, the people from Mexicali and stuff like that. And that was a mixture, because if you look at my blood, if you look at my hair, if you look at my skin color, I'm not fully European, I'm not fully indigenous. It's a combination. If you look at my grandmother, my grandfather had the eagle nose. My grandmother was 100% indigenous. She married someone who had mixed blood and so on and so forth. And I am proud of who I am. And I tell the world who I am today. And that's why it's so important. That's why I accepted the fact that Jeremy and Plan B wanted to make the movie. And that's why I started now writing my next book, just to make sure that I am proud to be Mexicano, that I am proud to be a poor immigrant who came undocumented to this country and who is now somehow figuring out the way, or trying to figure out the way, to meaningfully contribute back to our society. But these are things that have impact in our society. And I thank you for that question. But it saddens me when I am there watching the news sometimes and I hear the comments. I don't know how to tell the world how bad it is what we hear today.
Thank you. This question comes from Dr. Canales. Dr. Q, you leave me speechless with your life story. Can you share a bit more about your amazing patents, including the latest line of clothing you have been working on?
This is great. So the patents are broken down. It's simple. So every time I am in the operator, I had my first patent that we applied. We did not get, by the way. It was we figure out the way how to trace a cell with a green fluorescent protein and a sodium potassium chloride channel. And that was with Tomar Zarzon, who is an immigrant also from Mexico, from Zacatecas, who came to work in my lab. And he and I figured out the way, and we tried to put a patent. It turns out that it was very difficult to patent plasmids, but we were able to track a cell's migrating when the sodium potassium chloride channel allows the cells to move and constrict and expand and stuff like that. But then from then, we began to put patents and instruments, optical coherence tomography, the ability to see cells in the brain migrating. That's part of the mechanism by which we are trying to, instead of using a $10 million intraoperative MRI, we're using this other technology. But nowadays, even patents on the way we do the surgery, the way we record the surgery, the instruments that we're using for the surgery that are antiquated. So constantly trying to evolve in the laboratory, which is my OR, in the laboratory with the science and the technology. And most recently, since 2007, 2008, I've been thinking about this, and I recently partnered with a young group of biomedical engineers. And I knew that biotechnology, nanotechnology is out there to be able to make clothing that would allow me to stay, like right now I'm sitting. I've been sitting here, I don't know, for about an hour, and I operate sometimes for 6 or 7 hours. And if you don't keep good posture, you're gonna pay the price when you're in your 70s and 80s. And many of you guys are constantly sitting in your computers doing this. So I know that technology exists. So I partnered with these biomedical engineers, and now we're designing a whole set of clothing that would allow me. And of course, the companies, they want me to be the face. They say, okay, we're gonna do it, but it has to be told from your side, because it's so important for me to keep a good posture. But these are going to be garments that are going to allow us to keep a better sense of where we are positioned, hand position, neck position, back position, chest position. So I'm excited about that. But I'm constantly, last night I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I said, I love food, but there's not a great restaurant in Jacksonville. So Chris Fox is his name. He also loves Mexican food. I said, we need to open a restaurant. And I start laughing. And then he goes to me, I'm not laughing. I said, I know that every time you think about things, they sound crazy, but I know that you're thinking. I said, yes, I'm thinking about it. So that's how my brain works. Crazy stuff.
Dr. Q, I love your energy. Oh, perdón, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did think about the name of the restaurant, but it's so cool that I cannot reveal it in public, but it's super cool. That's how, even last night, brainstorming with him, I came out with the name of the restaurant already. I came and told my wife, and my wife is like, you're crazy. You're not opening a restaurant.
Oh my gosh, I love your energy, and hopefully it's infusing everyone here. We have just literally a couple more minutes, and I think you've addressed in part Patricia Redondo's question about some of your goals for the future. Now we know there might be a restaurant and some other great and exciting ideas. We'll take one more question. This is from Jorge Burmiki. Dr. Q, thanks for inspiring us. What do you believe to be your greatest source of motivation? What continues to fuel your ganas?
Oh my goodness. It's changed over time, but I would say that nowadays, my greatest source of motivation is the fact that I am seeing a world that is struggling in front of our eyes, that we continue to see this division between the right and the left, and it continues to separate. And what people don't understand is that we do need the right and the left. It's just like a bird. It needs a right wing and a left wing so that way they can fly. But the problem is that we're not communicating with each other. Unlike the birds, they use their wings to be able to communicate, and somehow they continue to fly high. And I think that today, I'm trying to figure out how can I inspire, how can I help us through my work as a scientist, as a surgeon. I'm not as knowledgeable about many political things or many social things as many of you guys are, but in my own world, how can I use that as a platform to be able to affect and create a better world? You know, and I hope I can do it through the work that I do in the laboratory, and somehow when given an opportunity to tell the world that the immigrants, the poor people, we do have great, great things to contribute to the world. And that we have to figure out how to open doors and how to keep them open, and potentially how to learn to speak to each other in a much more civil way.
I have the terrible responsibility of cutting in to end this session. But Dr. Q, before you leave, when you graced us with your presence at AAHHE some years ago, you made a statement that has remained with many of us for a long time. And you were talking about diversity and what happened when you looked at the brain. Could you close with that one observation, please?
Thank you, Dr. Canales. I got to tell you, I have done now over 5,000 brain surgeries, and I have looked at brains from all over the world. You know, people, kings, queens, you know, princes, poor people, rich people, Jewish, Catholic, you know, all kinds of skin colors. And the only thing that I can relate to is that every time I open the brain, I can see a difference between those brains. And that to me is something that is very, very powerful, and that I hope that somehow, somewhere, people begin to understand how we are so similar instead of being different.
Amazing. That is a perfect closing. Aurora, Patricia, thank you so much for leading this conversation. Dr. Q, I hope you'll remember us all when we are ever in need of your services. Mil gracias y adelante.
Gracias. Buen día a todos.
Buen día.
Ciao.
Oh gosh, how to transition from that. But we are now moving to the Outstanding Dissertation Competition Awards, sponsored by the Educational Testing Service out of Princeton, New Jersey. We are honored to have partnered with ETS since the inception of our ODC competition. With us today on behalf of ETS to recognize the awardees is Walt Jimenez, Senior Director in the Global Strategy and Growth Division of ETS. Walt, a first-generation Cuban-American born and raised in an immigrant community in northern New Jersey, is a member of the leadership team that oversees ETS's higher education offerings in undergraduate, graduate, and professional organization. In this role, he works closely with ETS researchers and developers tasked with the important work of helping individuals from all walks of life succeed in higher education and the workplace. Walt has extensive experience in assessment and product development, program management, K-12 and higher education leadership, and workforce licensure and certification programs and businesses. Also with us to assist in recognizing the Dissertation Award winners is the chair of the committee, David R. Garcia. Dr. Garcia is an associate professor with Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College in the Division of Educational Leadership and Innovation at Arizona State University. He has extensive experience in policy and research analysis. In addition to his university experience, he has worked in the public school system, in the State Department of Education, and with the Arizona State Legislature. AAHHE is very appreciative of David's willingness to lead the Dissertation Competition Award process over the last 3 years. Gentlemen, now on to the important matter at hand of recognizing these young emerging scholars.
Joanne, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. So, wow, Dr. Q, pardon me, although I'm going to get to Dr. O, is a tough act to follow. And I think the best we can do, Walt, is bring as much energy and passion as Dr. Q has brought to his speech to our work today. Again, my name is David Garcia. I am an associate professor in the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University. I also have the honor of being the chair of the AAHHE Outstanding Dissertation Competition. And I'm excited, very excited to be with you today to recognize the excellent scholarship from our emerging scholars that has come forth this year. But to begin, I have to recognize and I have to start at the beginning, and that is recognizing the founder, the brainchild of this idea, the late Alfredo de los Santos, who was a champion of higher education and Latino education, and a good friend and colleague of mine, who came up with the idea of the outstanding dissertation competition, and who then handed it off to another person I respect greatly, Dr. Luis Olivas, the founding president of AAHHE, who, well, according to local legend, which basically means, according to Dr. O himself, set off to establish the award with a couple $100 in his pocket from some fellow colleagues. Dr. O is responsible for starting the ODC program and for nurturing it to the status that it holds today. For those who know and love Dr. O and respect his work, know that that legend is true. Dr. O is always full of stories and great accounts. And we are grateful for his work and contributions. I know many of us watching this today have entered academia with the ambitious goal of making a difference for the communities that we care about. And Dr. O has done just that through the ODC. There's a tremendous gap out there in recognizing quality scholarship by and about the Latinx community. And this award starts to fill that gap. The ODC Award is professional recognition for the awardees that helps them propel their professional careers. Many of the emerging scholars who have received and been recognized by this award have moved on to accomplished academic careers. And most recently, in the last couple of years, the ODC has come full circle, with former award winners such as Patricia Perez now serving on the AAHHE Board of Directors. Now, before we go too far and go past the people who have done the excellent work here, I need to thank the ODC committee for their hard work. That's the slide that's up now. Let me tell you what this committee does. This committee reviews short dissertation abstracts of about 25 pages, a number of them that come in, to determine the finalists who we are then asked to submit their full dissertation. Each dissertation is read 3 times. And I estimate that each committee member through this process reads at or about 500 pages. That is some serious dedication and great work on behalf of this committee. Then this committee gets together and engages in some extremely thoughtful and thought-provoking discussions to narrow down the awardees to those that we are honoring today. And so, committee, I want to say thank you very much for being responsive, for your dedication, and for your commitment to the ODC, as well as to scholarship in the Latinx community. So, for the awardees, just to go back a little bit in my history, when I graduated from graduate school, we were warned that nobody will read our dissertations. And I think our professors told us that in an effort to keep us humble and maybe to temper our expectations. Well, I want to tell you that is not the case with your work. Your work through this committee has been read multiple times. In addition, we have debated the minute details of your text, from the theoretical framework, choices that you've made, to how you administered your research methods, how you wrote up your findings. It is a very thorough process, and you are being recognized today because your work rose to the top. So congratulations to all of our awardees out there. Lastly, the ODC would not be possible without the generous and steadfast support of ETS. When Dr. O set out on his journey to establish the ODC, he found a receptive audience in Kurt Landgraf, then president of ETS, who recognized the equity implications at play and agreed to support the program. Today, we are honored to be joined by Walt Jimenez, Senior Director at ATS, to represent and say a few words and to represent the wonderful and impactful relationship between AAHHE and ETS. Walt?
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, Doctora Canales, and saludos, colegas. It is my great honor and pleasure to have this opportunity to say a few words. And you're right, David, it's a tough act to follow, but we'll try to keep our energy up. That was so inspiring to hear from Dr. Q. I do represent ETS today as we recognize and celebrate this year's winners of the Outstanding Dissertation Awards. And I just want to add my acknowledgement and thanks to David's to Dr. Luis Olivas on behalf of ETS, since it was Dr. Olivas who first brought to ETS the idea of partnering with AAHHE on the Outstanding Dissertation Awards, which we have been and continue to be proud to do. This is a really important and exciting program for us. At ETS, as you may know, we believe in the life-changing power of learning. That is what our mission is all about. For the last 70 years, as a nonprofit, mission-driven organization, ETS has been driven by a vision of what's possible when all people can improve their lives through education. And it's why our uncompromising commitment to equity and fairness is behind everything we do. For many of us at ETS, like myself, the organization's mission is very personal. As Dr. Canales mentioned, I am a first-generation Cuban American, the first Jimenez in my family to be born in the United States after my parents came to this country from Cuba in the early 60s. I was raised in an immigrant community in northern New Jersey, and pursuing higher education, like I'm sure for many of you, was an expectation instilled in me by my family from a very early age. Ultimately, I have to confess, I reached ABD status, didn't quite make it all the way in my pursuit of a doctorate, but as Dr. Garcia and I were discussing yesterday, life happened, and I left academia to become a high school teacher, which led to my accidental career in educational testing. No one grows up, I think, saying, I want to be a test developer when I grow up. But I have had a wonderful career, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to do my small part to ensure that others like me have the opportunity to pursue their educational goals and dreams. And as I've had the pleasure over the last couple of days to listen to presentation by this year's Outstanding Dissertation Award winners and some of the other sessions in the conference, I've been so impressed by and grateful for the contributions from especially those brilliant emerging scholars we're recognizing today, who bring such passion and insight and personal experience to bear on their work in exciting and innovative ways. Listening to them and to all of you during this conference, I am heartened and made optimistic about the future of higher education, which we all know has many challenges and is in some ways in crisis. But the future is bright, knowing that Latinx scholars like this year's award winners will be leading the way for a long time to come. So felicidades on behalf of ETS to all the winners, and muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for sharing a little bit of your education story. It reminds me over and over again of the power education has to bring people together. So thank you very much for taking time today. And thank you to ETS for supporting this really important endeavor. Thank you. All right, now to the best part, recognizing our awardees. We'll start with our first slide. Some years for us as a committee, the choices are so difficult and the scholarship is so strong that we can't just choose three. And this year was one of those occasions. We were compelled by the quality of Jorge's scholarship to recognize his work as an honorable mention and his dissertation on Latino men and the college presidency. Jorge has done an amazing job. This is an important area. Walt has talked about the challenges of higher education, and one of them is diversity at the leadership ranks. And here is where Jorge's work excels. Jorge, congratulations on your work. And if I assume you were out there, please take a couple minutes and give us your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garcia. And I just wanted to highlight the award right here. Thank you so much for mailing that out to my home. It's certainly an honor, and I just really appreciate just the effort behind your leadership, Dr. Garcia, and even providing some context as to the rigorous work that goes behind reviewing these dissertations. It's always nice to hear that somebody else out there is reading your work, for sure, as doctoral students. First and foremost, I just wanted to give thanks to my familia, my parents, who sacrificed everything for me to be here. As an immigrant from Venezuela, this means the world, and these are sort of things that you just never think are going to happen to you. So just really honored, very honored to be here in a community like AAHHE that has become my familia, my academic familia, and so much support over the years, starting as a graduate fellow a few years ago. So it's just such an honor. I also want to thank my wife, Monica, for the support that she's provided throughout my entire educational journey. In addition to, of course, I'm dedicating this award to my daughters, Elena and Naomi, who are my whole world. And I just can't wait for them to do the same and more. And also, I will be remiss not to thank my dissertation chair, Dr. Victor Sáenz, who is an amazing mentor to me, and of course, an amazing dissertation advisor. In addition to my committee members, Dr. Rich Reddick from the University of Texas at Austin, Dr. Melissa Martinez from Texas State University, and Dr. Juan Gonzalez from the University of Texas at Austin. It takes a village, y'all, and I'm just so honored to receive this award from, again, a community that means the world to me, a community that's provided so much for me, which is AAHHE. So thank you all, mil gracias. This means everything to me, and again, mil gracias.
Jorge, felicidades. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Everyone out there, that is the reason why we do this, why we read 500 pages each to go through is to recognize emerging scholars and quality scholarship like that. So Jorge, felicidades, congratulations. Thank you. Our third place winner of the Outstanding Dissertation Competition receives an $1,000 award along with a framed print. And as a committee filled with civically engaged Latinx college graduates, the committee found themselves in Almicar Guzman's dissertation on uncovering typologies of civically engaged Latinx college graduates. Jorge did an outstanding scholarship that we think has implications for understanding how we as a community collectively have a larger and broader impact within and outside of academia. Almicar, congratulations on this award. Felicidades. And please take a few moments and thank those who helped get you here.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Thank you to you and the committee on your tireless work this year. Thank you to ETS for their support. And thank you to AAHHE for creating such a space for us to come together each and every year. And as a former fellow, I really learned so much from my cohort mates when I was a fellow, and then also with the alumni body since then. So I pursued my doctorate really to help help and be in a better position to really support, advocate, and uplift the Latino community. But completing it was one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. I struggled with mental health, with my physical health, and questioned my self-worth. But, my village really held me down. And so, from my dissertation chair and advisor, Dr. Alberto Cabrera, who's really mentor and really pushed me in ways that I never thought was possible to be my best self. To my committee, who gave me so much feedback and really helped shape the work from very beginning to the end. To my wife, and for those who have had a partner or been married going through the doctoral journey, those partners know that they are in it with you. And so to my wife, Lisette, I share this recognition with you, and thank you for always being my rock. To my family, thank you for your unconditional love and support and guidance. To my Maryland crew, thank you for the support and the feedback on my drafts and the strategy about how to get through, and definitely the good times. And to my friends as well, thank you for the constant support, the laughs, and the good times. And lastly, thank you to my colleagues at the League of Women Voters. Thank you. Gracias.
Almicar, thank you very much for that, and congratulations on the award. Thank you. The second place winner receives a $2,000 award along with a framed print. The committee found Giselle Martinez Negrete's study to be a groundbreaking contribution to the field. Personally, her chronicling of kindergartners, bilingual kindergartners in a bilingual classroom reads like the narrative of a fiction book. She did such an exceptional job with capturing the voices and experiences during her experiences in a way that is rich and a beautiful read. And in academia, Giselle, that is a compliment when something is fun to read and engaging to read. That's not always the case in our scholarship. So her work, Bilingual Ways with Words, we think is going to not only have make a major contribution in the field, we believe that she will too. So Giselle, congratulations, and please take a few moments to let us know how you feel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garcia. This award makes me feel humble and fills me with hope at the same time. I want to start by thanking my Heavenly Father, the one who has given me infinitely more than I could have ever asked or imagined. And I want to thank the amazing leadership of AAHHE, ETS, and the ODC committee for the exceptional work that you do. I also want to thank my family back at home in Colombia, my dad, Angel Martinez, my mom, Olivia Negrete, and my brothers, Oliver, Arlington, and Jefferson, for loving me unconditionally and believing that I could do this, even when I doubted myself so many times. I also want to thank my UW-Madison community and the academic community at large. You all have pushed me to think beyond my immediate reality. In particular, I want to thank Dr. Maggie Hawkins, my advisor and academic mom. I am the type of researcher that I am today because of her. She reminded me that my voice mattered and helped me to believe that I had a place in academia. I also want to thank my church family who loved me in words and deeds. They hugged me, fed me, counseled me, read my work, and prayed for me every single step of the way. I also want to thank the elementary school community where I conducted my research for the generosity and the willingness to just have difficult conversations. And finally, I want to dedicate this award to all those beautiful emerging bilinguals and their families. I am a second language learner myself, so I know the hardships and I know the pain. I was the girl who didn't learn English until she got to college, yet today I am seeing miracles happening before my eyes. So I want to say that all those emerging bilinguals and their families, they inspire me. I wrote this dissertation for them, and I hope that my work continues to speak up and respect their fuerza, lucha, y esperanzas. This award belongs to them. Thank you.
Giselle, thank you. And everyone, the eloquence in her voice is also in her text and in her work as well. So felicidades, congratulations. We greatly appreciate your contributions. Lastly, and certainly not least, our first place winner receives a $3,000 award along with a framed print. In addition, I should note that all the awardees are invited to submit an academic article based on their dissertation to the Journal of Hispanic Higher Education, as Laura's dissertation as well. You know, as academics, one of our higher purposes is to give voice to the voiceless. And Laura Minero's dissertation on the impact of detention proceedings and solitary confinement on Latinx, transgender, undocumented, and asylum-seeking immigrants. Her work achieves this higher purpose. And because of the fact that we believe she is providing voice to a group that has been silenced, and the manner in which she carried it out, the committee felt that Laura was deserving of this first place award. Laura, congratulations on your work. Thank you for your contributions and for doing this scholarship. And please, the Zoom is yours.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I keep going back and forth on what to say, and congratulations to the other winners as well. So thank you for this beautiful, beautiful award. Thank you to the AAHHE committee, to the OCD committee, to ETS. There's just so many people to thank on this. I want to share a little bit of a personal note. I think it's important for you all to know just how meaningful, you know, celebrating this kind of scholarship is. And for me, I had a really, really hard time getting through my dissertation for various reasons. Sorry, my puppy's trying to join the celebration here. And, you know, there was one feedback that I received during my proposal, and it was really, really difficult. And I think I took a year off after that feedback. So that feedback was that my writing wasn't at doctoral level. And I share this because I want people to know that it's important to not give up. And it's important to keep going, and that the most important thing out there is to believe in yourself. And one of the things that kept me going was knowing how important this work was, and how there are so many people, right, whose stories are not told. I had the privilege of hearing these stories of really resilient, incredible trans immigrants that were being abused by the US immigration detention system. And in all honesty, that is what kept me going, pushing myself to my own limits. There were multiple times that I broke down, and I think my wife, who's sitting right here, and the other people in my community who just consistently uplifted me and let me know right at this point that this work was incredibly important. So just thank you so much. I feel like I have no words, and I don't have enough time to thank, right, everybody who got me to this point. Like my parents who immigrated here 25 years ago, and we've been here in the US undocumented since then. So it hasn't been easy. It continues to be hard. And it's things like this, right, that certainly remind us that it's important to keep going. So thank you to you all for the work that you're doing. It's important, and I'm just really grateful to you all. So thank you.
Wow, that was a tremendous testament for perseverance. Laura, I would have never guessed that anybody told you your writing would ever not be academic quality. It was impressive work. So thank you very much for sharing with us. So Jorge, Almigar, Giselle, Laura, we expect great things from you. We look forward to your successes, and just listening to you, your passion, the manner in which you have thanked those who have brought you here. I am confident that when it is your turn, you will do exactly what Walt and this committee has done, and that is give back to those who are coming next. So thank you very much for all of your work. And everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here for this presentation. I look forward to seeing you all again, where we can not only listen to our awardees, but also give each other big hugs and congratulations, and in celebration as well. Look forward to that at the 2022 AAHHE conference. Gracias y cuídense. Hasta luego.
David and Walt, thank you so much for leading this segment of the plenary session. You know, we said you were tough, Dr. Q was a tough act to follow, but you did not disappoint. Hearing these students, the work that you all have invested in and done with such joy and pleasure and love is so rewarding. Thank you to all of you. Those of you out in the audience, thank you for joining us for this plenary. Please come back, take a break, come back. There's some more wonderful concurrent sessions awaiting you, and certainly more tomorrow. Thank you again. Have a lovely day.